Hello, humans. Welcome to The Front Line, a leadership and business podcast brought to you by Peregrine Corporate Services, an Isle of Man-based fiduciary provider. My name is Martin Hall, and thanks for listening. Today, I'm joined by Ross from IR Global. Thanks for joining me today, Ross.
Thank you. Pleased to be here, Martin.
So, as I say with most guests, to get a bit of background on yourself, early days, where were you born and where did you raise and go to school?
I was born and raised here in sunny Birmingham in the UK. You can perhaps detect by the accent. So I lived here all my life. Spent most of my career in and around the Midlands, although I have worked overseas extensively in the last sort of 20 years, I guess. Lived in France for a short period of time. But yeah, schooled around here. Before I worked at IR Global, I worked in industrial electrical engineering, almost industrial IT, for a number of years.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time sort of overseas, making computers talk to other computers and machines. But that really led me to get a good understanding of what people are looking for, not only from their advisors, but also learning about different cultures, and actually learning that many cultures, when it comes to business, are very similar. I think people have maybe an expectation that they think it's so much different to do business, whether they're from France or Germany or UK or even Asia. And in my experience, yes, there are some differences, but I think when you strip it back, most people, certainly in professional services and what they're looking for, do have the same expectations.
So what was that type of IT infrastructure? Just being nosy.
It was mainly wireless technology, and it was, in terms of industrial IT, it was making automated systems communicate with each other. So if you had, say, a large factory over sort of multiple sites, if you had to wire all those sites and dig up the road and run cables everywhere, it would be incredibly expensive. Whereas if you had wireless technology to communicate with buildings, to control the sort of the temperature, to control machinery, you could do that. And obviously there's a cost involved with that, but it saves a lot of time and money by being able to use wireless technology. So I'd have to go overseas and sort of survey buildings and factories and then put together a plan and then sell that to various large scale end users, particularly in things like food, automotive, where you need large sites, but you still need a huge amount of control and security. So a lot of people want to centralize those things. So you do that by automation and technology, but primarily wireless technology. So different to what I do now.
Yeah, and I assume that was quite interesting in regard to constantly different projects, while the underlying principles of what you're doing is the same. Just understanding those businesses and how they work in the different areas and industries.
Yes, absolutely. But again, fundamentally, and I guess it's perhaps the same within the industry, as long as you're providing clear information and you're setting clear guidelines and clear timelines and costings, if the will's there, then you should be able to get things done. But I think to try and keep things as simple as possible, in the same in many aspects of business, that's really the key. But yeah, you've got to understand in the first instance if they've got the money, if they've got the will, if they understand what they're doing. But that's your job, or that was my job, prior to working at IR Global.
It's interesting then, because then you look at one of our key aspects we talk to people about is communication, and I guess that's fundamental to that part, whether it's across language as well, I guess, as well. You're presenting something, the interpretation in different languages, maybe.
Yes.
Different as well, and their challenges, I'm sure.
Yeah. And, as an English person, and, we're terrible with languages ourselves, you don't actually realize how often you're talking in almost in riddles, saying something like, "Oh, are we all singing from the same hymn sheet?" Now, if you said that to somebody in France or Germany, you don't even realize what it is that you're actually saying, but they've been trying to decipher that information.
Yeah.
You have to speak, and particularly write, in clear English. So sometimes, you want to be all wordy because you think, oh, that makes me sound really intelligent. Well, actually, it doesn't, because you're only just sort of confusing somebody.
Yeah, interesting.
Really, and particularly write in plain English, and actually spread out your paragraphs as well. Writing a lot more paragraphs, because this is what I learned from overseas. Even though their English is exemplary, they understand it so much better if they are reading in short paragraphs.
Interesting. And only this morning I was listening to an audio book, a psychology book, and they were talking about writing and how it's important. You can present language in different ways, as in just how it looks from the font, to make sure people engage with it rather than skim it. So you might make it slightly more blurry, because it makes people have to look at it and focus on it
Sure.
rather than skim it.
Yeah.
Psychology.
Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just before we get on to sort of present day and IR Global, outside of work, what do you get up to? Apart from your BMX that I've seen.
Yeah, well, I do like. I was born in the 70s, but really a child of the 80s. So yeah, BMX is still a passion of mine. But I have a young family. I have 7-year-old twin daughters, so they take up fair of my time. But I like my sports. I like my football. I like my sort of 20th century social political history, quizzing, a lot of history. Also, a guy that likes to go out for a beer with his pals once in a while. But I guess, fairly boring. Married man with 2 kids.
That keeps you busy.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
I know. So IR Global, you talk about a bit about your role there at the moment.
Yeah, so IR Global, for those
what they are, expand.
We are a professional services network dealing with lawyers, accountants, and corporate finance and other specialist financial advisors. And we've got roughly about 1,000 members globally in 155 jurisdictions. We've worked alongside you guys for a number of years. And the idea is that you as financial advisors, you're looking to work with lawyers, you're looking to work with accountants, and you're looking to build partnerships around the world. And it's for boutiques and mid-sized firms that have a good reputation locally, but who are looking to grow their cross-border business and build partnerships with other like-minded firms around the world. So that's really our job. It's really for firms to sort of grow and network amongst themselves, primarily to say to their clients, look, Mr. Client, in a globalized world, yes, we can help you locally, but by the way, if you do have some requirements, or you do need some advice, or you do need partnerships in Asia, in Europe, in the US, wherever it may be, we're part of a bigger group, a bigger community that can assist them.
Yeah.
That's really the goal of what we're looking to do. It's actually our 10-year anniversary. It was last month, actually. So it's a special time for us. And yeah, we've been doing well, and it's a nice story.
And what made you change from IT infrastructure to?
It's a good question. Well, I did a lot of work at conferences. I did a lot of work with advisors. I spent a lot of time overseas, so there was some synergy there. But primarily, I was actually really unhappy in my role, and the founder was a friend of mine, a guy called Tom Wheeler, and he'd worked in the industry for a number of years, and he set up IR Global, and then after a few months, he realised that he was onto a good thing, but he needed some support, and he needed somebody to come along with different skills and different background to him, to come along to help complement and to help grow the business. But I didn't know much about professional services. I knew little, but not a great deal. But I knew what people wanted. I knew that you have to provide clear information. You have to keep things as simple as you can, stick to promises, and be as transparent as you can. And that's the same in professional services as it is across any other industry. So my background was sales and marketing, and I just sort of transferred some of those skills into what we're doing now. And
to go back, we were obviously talking earlier about communication. How have you seen that, obviously, and I suppose particularly over the last few months as well. But how have you found that? Have you found a change over the last sort of 5 or 10 years about how communication has adapted?
I think there's been a change of mindset within professional services in terms of marketing and social media. I think that that's been a real change. I think even 5 years ago, some professional services firms would have felt that social media wasn't for them, and it wasn't really a platform to share information. But I think that that has changed. That is a significant shift, certainly from 10 years ago, even from 5 years ago. Professional services firms would have felt, oh, that's not really us. You know, they wouldn't necessarily have understood that there were different types of platforms. They may have felt that social media was more like Facebook.
Yeah.
They didn't realize, oh, that, you know, Facebook, that's not for us as a professional services firm. But, you know, I think that slowly there's been a realization. Some firms have caught on quicker than others, but certainly in terms of marketing and how you can get information out there, I think that's been the biggest change. And I guess for firms, what they're looking to do is, particularly on social media, yes, they're looking to show the professional side, and they're working on articles and cases and success stories and legislation changes and updated tax information in different jurisdictions. And that is certainly very important. But they're also looking to humanize their business a little bit more. And I think that you've seen a significant shift with that. People are trying to be more personable. You get more photos on people's websites. You're almost trying to say, look at me, I'm an individual. I'm not just a brand. I'm not just a company faceless. I am actually an individual, and you do actually learn more about individuals. So I think there's been more warmth and more openness in terms of how firms have projected themselves. And I think that's been the most significant shift in the last few years.
And have you, as IR Global, do you feel you guys have also then done similar to shift from?
Well, I see that that's partly our job, to communicate that with our members. You know, our members, because they're boutiques and they're mid-sized firms, they don't have huge marketing departments. They don't have a fleet of salespeople or a fleet of business development people or marketing teams. They may have somebody that does it. They may have an individual. They may have a small team, or it may be somebody, a partner in the firm. Maybe there's 5 partners in a firm, and somebody takes it upon themselves to take the lead in marketing. So these people aren't experts. So they're looking for guidance from companies such as ourselves to say, look, this is what you should be doing. This is what we would recommend. So they're looking to us for guidance. And that's really partly our job to say, look, you know, have you thought about this? I think that you could maybe improve your marketing output by making these small changes. Yeah. I think in some ways, professional services firms have been slow to update, but you know, you have to understand that's their product and that's their market. They're not trying to release a new perfume. They're not trying to release a new car or a new set of trainers. They are providing a service. It is built upon trust and understanding, and that is still the greatest commodity that any professional services firm has, is its trust and understanding. So you can't lose sight of that. So you don't do sort of whiz bang and too flashy. You've still got to show that professional side, but at the same time show a bit of warmth and a human side to you as well, because you're still fundamentally, you're trying to build relationships and you're looking to get repeat business from people. And the way that you do that is by getting closer to people. Yeah. One of the ways that you get closer to people.
Yeah, it's interesting that the concept of almost an extension of, you know, I look at ourselves as part of the network, that you're really an extension of that in regard to helping that marketing and development side of things. Because often, I guess, you can just look at networks as an opportunity that allows us to knock on someone else's door within the network, but it's that value add you can add in the middle there as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we always say to our members, look, if you're going to just join a group such as ours just to get work, you know, that's not going to work, because if everybody did that, nobody would get anywhere. So the best way to get work, in my opinion, is to come and be open and to say, look, I have got several opportunities here in Asia, and I'm looking to partner up with firms in the US, in Europe, wherever it may be. So if you can come with an open and giving mentality, then you're much more likely to get work. If you go up to somebody at a conference or in a meeting and go, oh, by the way, are you looking for any business in here? Or have you heard about our services? you're just going to go cold on people. Are going to go cold on you. But if you actually are interested in them and asking open-ended questions and asking them about their business, you're much more likely to get somewhere. And now that sounds really obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people still think, oh, I'm going to a conference or I'm going to a meeting. I better project and tell them about my business and get out my messages, not without actually really listening to other people or what they've got to say.
Yeah. So one of the kind of questions I was going to go on to was the sort of networking side of things, and I guess tips and ideas for people. And I suppose you touch on it there, which is it becomes a two-way street of going listening to what other people are after and what other people need as well.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, in terms of a group such as ours, it's yes, of course, everyone's looking for referrals, everyone's looking for business. Of course they are, but it is also about you being able to demonstrate to your clients that you have international capabilities. So that's a real value add, where you can say to them, look, we're part of a bigger group, a bigger community that can assist them. So yes, it's about getting referrals, but it's also about passing out referrals as well. And as I just mentioned, if you can go there if you do your preparation at a conference or a meeting where you think, actually, I do need some advice, or I'm looking for support in the US, in Germany, in China, wherever it may be, you can go there and you can try and pinpoint certain individuals where you think, actually, this person can maybe help me. And then you're much more likely to pick up some work that way.
Yeah, the other way around. Yeah.
About preparation as much as anything else. And certainly, what you should be doing as well is allowing yourself some time afterwards, after, let's say, a conference or a meeting, to follow up effectively. Because if you just go to a meeting or a conference and you're not following up effectively, you might as well not bother going in the first place. Yeah. I think it was about those 3 days or 4 days, and yes, you might have had a nice time, but you come back. Of course, you're tired. Of course, you've got stacks of emails and you've got clients that you've got to call. Everyone understands that, but you do have to put some time aside to actually follow up effectively with the people that you've met there. Now, if you go to a meeting or a conference, you're not going to have connected with everybody. We all know that. But there may be a handful of people, there may be 5, 10 people where you think, actually, there's some real value there where I can develop the relationship, where I can perhaps give them some work, or maybe they can give me some work and I can add value to my clients. And those are the ones that you have to follow up with effectively. And yes, it's nice to connect on LinkedIn. That's great, but that's not enough. You need to be staying in touch with people, and you need to make sure that you follow up, because they may not have a requirement straight away. They may need you, or you may need them in a month's time, or in 3 months' time, or in 6 months' time, when something crops up from one of your clients and you do need some support. You think, oh, I remember that person. I remember connecting with that lady or that guy at that seminar that I met them at. And if you've stayed in touch effectively with them, it just makes the relationship so much easier to build upon.
Yeah, it's been in that eye line, isn't it? Constantly, or not constantly.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about post trips. It's something, again, I travel with work, and you try and do your file notes as you travel back from it and send some emails, but it's almost maybe on business trips, thinking out loud now. It's, you almost want to book your trip and then book a day out of the office 4 days after you get back to make sure you follow up on have like a post travel day out of the office again, like you say, no distraction from your existing clients to give you that.
Absolutely. And it's also about setting a follow-up after that, because lots of firms will take that advice and will follow up immediately afterwards. So maybe you've gone to a seminar and everyone's exchanging business cards and everyone's following up and connecting on social media immediately afterwards. That's great, but it's just as effective and just as important that 3 months later or a month later, you set yourself a reminder to where you reconnect with that person. Oh, do you remember we had a chat? Do you remember, we spoke about this particular project, or, this particular legislation changes? Can you update me on what your firm's doing about that? Or, here's what we're doing. You may well find that useful. So yes, you have to follow up afterwards, but you also have to set a timetable and an infrastructure in place to follow up a few weeks later, a few months later, so you're staying in touch with people.
Yeah, so that reminds me of my February meetings. I've got to go now and do some follow-up. Another interesting subject generally, leadership, which is, I think, a very or often forgot about skill set. Obviously, from your previous job to what you do now, that's something that's, I guess, just part of the day-to-day life of what you do within the business now. Skills, things you've built on over the years. Do you feel it comes naturally to yourself?
I think leadership works two ways, particularly at the moment. I mean, at the moment, there's a lot of people who are frightened, a lot of people who are concerned about the future. And, you know, what we're going through right now in early May, it's people are more frightened about the unknown and what's going to happen. And because nobody can predict that, that's the thing that people are most frightened of. Our job at IR Global and your job as an advisor to your clients is you have got to be positive. Okay, you have got to be positive about the future and to help them, because some of those clients are frightened, and some of those clients are looking to you for leadership and for you to say, look, I know we're having a tough time. I know this, you know, is going to be difficult, but it will be okay. I think it's your job, and certainly our job, to be as positive as we can, because if you're projecting your fears onto them, you are not helping. You are certainly not helping at all, one little bit. So even if you're not necessarily feeling that positive that day, overwhelmingly, you have to provide a positive message, because that is leadership. And maybe you have got to make some changes to your business. Maybe you have got to look at other opportunities. Maybe you have got to look at different sectors or industries. Maybe you have got to change your business somewhat, because you know you're going through a particular time. But this is a time of opportunity as well. Remember. And there are some people that are doing very well and will do very well. And there's some people that are finding it hard. We understand that. Nobody's trying to pretend that it's not difficult for some people. But your job, my job, is to be positive and to help. Now that is leadership. That's leadership not only internally to your staff, but it's also leadership to your clients, because you know, believe it or not, they are looking for you to help them in these situations and to hold their hand.
Yeah, no, very interesting, very true. And when you look at, I suppose, conferences was an important part, as you mentioned, we're in May now, kind of coronavirus and the lockdown. How are you guys sort of, again, it's, I guess, partly a fundamental part of what you do, the conferences. How are you adapting to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, we've had to put on pause some of our global conferences and some of our regional meetings. Hopefully that's only a temporary measure. Certainly we hope so. Otherwise you're wiping off whole industries of, you know, aviation, hospitality. You know, so I'm sure it will only be a temporary measure. But like other firms, we're putting together regional groups. We're putting together practice groups where they're having their own virtual meetings. You know, Zoom meetings where they're getting together to talk about, you know, updates and to stay connected with each other. And then I think later on this year, we'll probably have our own virtual conference as well. We just got to make sure that we adapt. You know, I spoke just a short while ago about adapting to the circumstances, and we're no different as well. So we'll probably be having a virtual conference or a series of virtual conferences, because people do still need to stay connected. People still need to understand about different jurisdictions. People will still be, the business will still be going ahead. The world still will be turning, and we need to, you know, make sure that we're there to support each other as well. And then when things change, then maybe we'll keep virtual conferences and those will run alongside our more traditional events as well.
Yeah, a blend of both, isn't it? Yeah. And for our listeners and viewers out there, yourself, book-wise, what kind of thing tick the box for you? Are you when you read, do you tend to, or listen or learn, do you tend to do that, or not, or does it work, or nothing?
Well, no, I'm a voracious reader. I guess I didn't even realise it. I'm 47 now, and 20, even certainly 25 years ago, I would have just read sort of autobiographies and a bit of trash. But that's not the case anymore. I mean, I'm quite boring in many respects. I read sort of 20th century social political history. Right. So it's based upon, you know, fascism or communism, or, you know, the build up to World War II, World War One, the effects, the economic effects of the crash. So that's really stuff that I read. So it's quite heavy.
Yeah.
I need to read many pages at night before falling asleep. But that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy. And then if I'm going on holiday, then yeah, I'll perhaps revert maybe to more of a sort of a trashy novel, or read a sports autobiography, and then I can sort of my brain at the door. But yeah, it's interesting how you get older, the different things that you suddenly become more interested in.
Yeah.
I think that's the same for everybody. And when I speak to a lot of my friends and colleagues, as you get a little bit older, your tastes do change, and you wake up one day and you're reading a book and you think, how am I reading this book? What how did this happen? But
yeah, no, I'm the same. Certainly over the last few years, yeah, it would have just been, a fiction crime novel. And now it's not that I do a lot of or audio books. I'm more of an audio book, but now, yeah, it's like I say, walking the dog this morning, listening to a psychology book. I'm like,
yeah,
I need a rain check sometimes.
Yeah.
Magazine gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously we touched on the adapting of business. That was interesting. So just thanks for your time today. I suppose people want to reach out to yourself and to IR Global. How do they do that? What's the best way?
Yeah, well, you can contact us. Our website is www.irglobal.com. My own personal email address, if people want to reach out to me, is ross@irglobal.com. And that's the best way to reach us.
All right, great. Well, thanks for your time today. It's much appreciated.
Super. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Martin.
Thanks for listening, everyone.